sitting here. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Matan, Scharf. I will be your guide through this session this morning. We have a very, very interesting session, the best one, I think, of this entire conference, and that's only until the next one comes up, and then that becomes the best one, and so forth. This morning we have 10 great presenters from all over the world. That is Israel and the US mostly, which is for us the entire world. We're going to have a few presentations first, and then we'll take a short break so you guys can freshen up. And then we'll come back and do another session. We have 10 presenters presenting 8 different topics. Do the math. And I want to get started straight away. So can you see my presentation? Because I know that there's some issue with the lighting. It's kacha kacha, as they say. Well, have any of you guys been drunk before? Anyone here? Hands up if you've been drunk before. Hands up, better yet. Hands up if you were drunk last night. No, just me? Okay, because something very interesting happened. I went out last night, we had a very festive cocktail, and I had a lot to drink. And then this morning I woke up and I opened my presentation, and something very, very interesting happened. All of the words in my presentations disappeared. Anyone here heard of PowerPoint karaoke? So I'm gonna PowerPoint karaoke myself, basically. So I don't really need you to see the presentation, so I feel comfortable with that. But if the next speakers actually want you to see their presentation, maybe we'll change the lighting. So I'm getting started, and I want to start by talking about the pink elephant in the room. I don't know if it's supposed to be pink or not, but I thought this one was cute, so I used the pink one. The elephant in the room, of course, is the fact that we are in Cyberweek. And we just completed, this is completely counterproductive in my opinion, but great, let's continue doing that. And I think that the elephant in the room in our case is the fact that we are in Cyberweek, and everyone's talking about cyber. Cyber. But no one's doing anything about it, to do the analogy of Winston Churchill talking about the weather, right? So I want to present a very, very short, it's not even an idea, just more of a thought that I had, and I want to present it and share it with you, and then I want to give the stage to my fellow speakers and have them present tons of ideas of how to solve all these problems. So let's talk a little bit about cyber. Let's talk about cyber, and in this, I prepared this chart here with lots of numbers, and I'm going to have to try and figure out what each number means. So it's not going to be easy. Help me out here. So we're looking at the growth between 1992 and 2015. This first column talks about the number of websites on the internet. The number of websites on the internet. So we started off with about 10, and then 24,000, then 90 million, 200 million, and today getting very, very close to 1 billion websites on the web. So you could argue that cyber is expanding. Cyber is growing. Then we have this. This column talks about the number of users. The number of users. So in 1992 there were 0, which is weird because there were already 10 websites. So I guess they were just standing there and doing nothing. And then it grew, and today we're talking about around 3.18 billion users. Now, the world population, last time I counted, was around 7 billion people, right? I don't know, I mean, maybe with China now it's 8. But we're getting really, really close to some kind of a barrier of the physical growth of cyberspace. Let's go on. This next number talks about the number of malware. Different types of malwares that can be found online. And as you can see, that is also growing. The number 10 over there, I wrote a little note so that you know it's not a real number. I don't know what the number was, so I just plugged in 10. So is 0.6 billion, but 0.6 million. But the rest of them are kind of true. And then that brings us to the real discussion about cybersecurity, and that is what is happening with this huge growth and this huge environment, and that is attacks are happening. So this next column talks about the number of breaches that occurred every year, and then how many records were leaked in that year as a consequence of these breaches. Now, the numbers are close to being accurate. I think they're a little bit low, but I got them from some website, so I tend to trust websites that have numbers in them. And then the last column I want to share with you, and this one is a little bit easier, and that is the monetary damage. This is US only, as a subsequence of cybercrime or cyber attacks. And this is US only. Now, the way I'll quote my wife, I'm not angry, I'm disappointed, right? So something really bad is happening in cyberspace, and it keeps growing. It keeps becoming worse and worse and worse. How many of you have been to Chris Roberts' lecture? Is anyone here? Yeah, quite a few people, good. Chris was talking about this. Chris kept saying how things are just constantly getting worse and worse and worse. They're getting worse for us as consumers, as people. And he was talking about the 8% and the 92%, and this room represents obviously the 8%, so this is an exercise of futility. But still, I want to talk to you guys about what we all agree on and the rest of the world does not seem to understand. Things are not getting any better. But we're investing all this money and effort and resources in making things better, but they're not getting better. And, ooh, wow. And that brings us to the question of security solutions. Oh, I'm sorry, this is the wrong slide. This is from 20 years ago. That brings us to the question of solutions. Now, I chose a lot of different logos for this slide, and you will see a very interesting mix between infrastructure companies, well, infrastructure for cloud, for example, software companies that are operating system software companies, or even device manufacturers, and of course, security companies, lots of different security companies, because when we look at it, we expect to see all of these people coming up with a solution, right? Different types of solutions for different types of market, different types of problems, but these are the people who are responsible for coming up with this solution. And then, what? Oh yeah, you're right, there's a mistype here. I'm sorry. Yeah, this one, you're right, I'm sorry. Yeah, my bad, sorry. And that really brings us to the discussion about who's really responsible. Yes, I mean, technically, they're responsible because they're the ones writing the code. But I have a very, very long debate with my friends and colleagues from this very same community that's sitting here about whether or not the user, the consumer, is responsible for security. Well, we know that we are all responsible for the security flaws and the security breaches, but are we responsible for coming up with a solution? Now, my personal statement until 17 hours ago, pretty much, that has nothing to do with drinking whiskey though, was that users are not and should never be a part of the security equation. In fact, a good architecture for a solution is one, in my personal opinion, that negates the user. The user does not have the power to create damage. I always give iOS as an example of an operating system that is so restrictive and so closed and confined that me, as a user, I cannot create damage. I can't harm myself. And I always use that as an example, but then something happened in the past couple of weeks that made me change my mind. Not change my mind because I think I was wrong. I'm often mistaken, never wrong. But because something happened in the last year, and I want to highlight that, and I want to leave you with that thought, and then give the stage to smarter and better people that are actually going to talk about solutions. Something happened in the last year, and that is crypto locks. Anyone here heard of crypto locks? Better yet, anyone knows someone who was affected by a crypto lock? Almost everyone. That's amazing. Because this phenomenon has changed the way consumers experience cybersecurity. It became personal. All of a sudden, someone comes and encrypts all of the data on your laptop or your smartphone, if it's not an iOS, and then you have to pay them ransom. And that's a personal experience. It's not like having your hard drive deleted, which still those of us who've been using Windows 95 and then other versions are kind of used to. It's a very different experience. And I think that this new trend of cybercrime could fundamentally change the way we perceive cybersecurity, and maybe we'll actually start acting to make it better. So my last point is, of course, cyber. So thank you very much for listening. I'm sorry, I meant cyber. And I want to give the stage now to my speakers. So one slide is actually going to have content in it, so I apologize for that. What we're going to talk about today is some of the most interesting trends in cybersecurity today in the world. We brought some of the best speakers in the world to talk about these topics, so we're going to have a very interesting session, and with your permission, I would like to call on stage